Welcome to the debate. Imagine, just for a second, spending weeks, literally weeks, meticulously verifying the hard facts of a client's professional career.
Right. Digging through all that raw history.
Yeah, exactly. You've tracked down the exact revenue figures they managed, the specific nuances of a team they led, maybe the exact timeline of a product launch. Basically, you've built this pristine, human-verified record. And then your certification board tells you that to pass your final exam, you absolutely must run those verified facts through an AI.
A machine that is, quite literally designed to hallucinate and smooth over edges.
Right, to inflate reality. So today, we are looking at a highly controversial policy update from the Living Professional Record Academy, specifically focusing on the Module 10 capstone audit and certification defense. The new rule is definitive. It's black and white. AI use is mandatory in the advisor certification capstone. The no AI use attestation has been completely removed, so candidates just cannot opt out.
Which honestly brings us to this fascinating crossroads for the entire profession. The core question here is, does mandating AI use and, requiring candidates to actively govern it through this really complex maze of mandatory documentation, does that serve as the ultimate test of an advisor's judgment? Or does it just unnecessarily conflate the fundamental, highly nuanced human art of professional record interpretation with what is essentially just AI auditing?
Well, I'll be arguing that making AI governance mandatory is not just a good idea, but it's absolutely essential. We are living in a market where the surface of a professional's identity is constantly being flattened and, frankly, artificially inflated by generative tools.
Yeah, the buzzword problem.
Exactly. So the certification capstone must stress test a candidate's ability to anchor those shiny AI-generated surfaces back to the factual source. It is, I think, a necessary friction to prove that they can defend the truth.
Right. And I take the opposing view here. I argue that forcing AI into this process introduces, immense synthetic complexity. It introduces severe privacy risks and administrative bloat that completely distracts from the pure human application of the methodology. It tests a peripheral, arguably temporary technological skill at the expense of the core competency of a true professional record advisor.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. If we look at the Academy's rationale here, it all comes back to a single line in Module 10 that really struck me. It says, certification is not worksheet completion. Certification is demonstrated advisor judgment.
Right.
So the Academy isn't trying to see if you can just, follow a template in a vacuum. They want to know if you can defend professional truth in the wild. And the source material is incredibly explicit about what this looks like. It literally says, this does not mean AI builds the capstone. The candidate must demonstrate governed AI use.
Yeah, emphasizing the word governed there, which carries a very, very heavy administrative burden in this specific context.
It does, yes. It's an intense sequence. A candidate actually has to prepare a safe source packet, write a source-bound prompt.
Log the rejected ones.
Yes, exactly. And manually revise that output to complete a final AI translation log. It's rigorous, absolutely. But by forcing candidates to manually revise the machine's output and prove that, and here's a quote, AI output answers to the record, the capstone verifies they possess the defensive skills necessary to ensure they won't let automated tools dictate a client's narrative.
Well, I come at it from a different way. If we look at the core doctrine of the entire LPR method, the absolute bedrock is that every single rendering must trace back to the record, right? And that traceability relies on fundamentally human skills.
Sure.
It relies on what the curriculum calls Tool 2B, which is that process of context reconstruction, taking a fragmented history and piecing it back together. And also Tool 1C, the meticulous mapping of evidence to a claim. When you remove the ability to just say, hey, I didn't use AI, the Academy essentially forces candidates to play AI police.
Right, but
Evaluating a candidate's ability to fill out a rejected AI claims log measures their prompt engineering. It measures their proofreading. It does not measure their ability to build a robust, meaningful human record from raw experience.
wait, hold on. I'm getting a little lost in the distinction you're making there. Are you saying that a candidate could completely nail the human element of building this record, but essentially fail the capstone just because they stumbled on the AI compliance portion?
Precisely. Yes. Let's look at the capstone scoring categories. The primary ones are source discipline, claim maturity, and privacy judgment. Forcing AI into the middle of this creates a highly artificial scenario. You are putting the candidate in a position where they are simply correcting inflated AI language.
But isn't correcting inflated language the very definition of claim maturity? I mean, recognizing what's real and what's not?
Not in the deepest sense of the method, no. Deep claim maturity involves what the curriculum calls market translation. Market translation requires looking at an evidence-backed value pattern, identifying the specific industry lanes that fit that pattern, and conceptualizing a professional trajectory from scratch.
Okay, yeah.
It's a massive cognitive leap. If the AI is generating the initial draft, the candidate is just grading a machine's homework. They aren't demonstrating that they can make that leap from raw evidence to market language themselves. They're just reacting.
I get that. But let's step away from the textbook for a second. Think of it like the difference between testing someone's driving ability on an empty, pristine test track versus testing them in heavy, unpredictable city traffic.
Okay.
Operating on an empty track proves you know how the steering wheel and the pedals work. That is your human context reconstruction in isolation. You can map evidence to a claim when nothing is bothering you. But AI is the traffic. The reality is that clients are going to come to these advisors already using AI.
Oh, constantly, yeah.
Right. They will bring resumes and LinkedIn bios that are absolutely dripping with AI-optimized buzzwords, completely detached from their actual evidence.
Which is exactly why the advisor needs to know how to build from the ground up, not just edit the fluff.
But testing of a candidate can look at polished, generic, AI-generated output and ruthlessly trace it back to the source. That is the only way to prove they can survive the traffic. Let's walk through a hypothetical. Say a candidate feeds the AI a simple fact, managed a $50,000 divisional budget.
Okay.
The AI spits out spearheaded multi-million-dollar financial overhauls driving unprecedented enterprise growth.
A classic hallucination.
Right, a total fabrication. If the candidate just accepts that because it sounds beautiful and authoritative, they fail. They lack source discipline. If they can look at that persuasive sentence, identify that it lacks a proof foundation, and have the discipline to strike it down on the rejected AI claims log, they prove mastery. They prove they won't be seduced by the surface. That is why it has to be mandatory.
But, okay, your traffic analogy assumes the traffic has to be inside the testing vehicle itself, which brings us to the elephant in the room here, exposure. If we're forcing these facts into an external tool, we have to talk about a massive structural paradox in the source material regarding privacy.
The privacy protocols are pretty clear, though.
Well, the text explicitly states privacy failure can block certification. Candidates are given automatic red flags if they upload confidential, employer-owned, or sensitive third-party material. The warning banners are everywhere. They constantly say, do not upload protective material into external AI tools.
As they should be. Client confidentiality is paramount.
Right. But simultaneously, AI use is mandatory. The paradox here is brilliant but cruel. To prove you can build a comprehensive human record, you are forced to actively dismantle it into anonymous pieces just to appease the machine.
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, candidates have to strip their carefully gathered evidence down to what the text calls metadata-only entries or safe summaries, just so they can feed it into the AI safely. How does that make sense? You are asking them to build a robust record, but forcing them to withhold the most robust details from the very tool you mandate they use.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it differently. I don't see that as a cruel paradox at all, actually. I see that as a highly intentional, brilliant feature of the assessment design. Preparing that safe source packet and completing the privacy and exclusion log before ever touching the AI, that is the exact mechanism that tests privacy judgment.
By artificially creating an exposure risk just to test if they can avoid it?
Because the exposure risk is ubiquitous. It's not artificial. It's literally the air we breathe now. How does a candidate actually protect a client? They have to learn the mechanism of abstraction. Let's say a client worked on a highly confidential, unannounced corporate merger.
Sure.
The advisor cannot put the company names or the exact financial leverage into ChatGPT. They just can't. They have to strip out the nouns and the proprietary figures and replace them with structural placeholders. They might say something like managed post-merger integration for a Tier 1 enterprise acquisition, focusing on redundant system consolidation.
Right.
They are essentially learning how to feed the skeleton of an achievement to an AI without giving it the soul. That mechanism deciding item by item, can this go into the prompt, is a crucible. If they fail to protect the subject there, it triggers the automatic red flag. It forces them to operationalize their privacy boundaries.
I understand the crucible argument, I do. But let's examine what actually happens to the data once it passes through that crucible. When the candidate feeds this stripped-down, metadata-only skeleton into the AI is going to do what it does best. It abhors a vacuum.
True.
It's going to hallucinate a polished surface to fill in the gaps of the context you just forced the candidate to withhold.
Exactly, which forces the candidate into a defensive posture. A core tenet of Module 10 is the surface is not the source. The capstone requires the candidate to produce at least 2 final renderings. Maybe one is a standard resume rendering and the other is a non-resume rendering, like a LinkedIn bio or proposal paragraph. By generating that initial surface via AI, the candidate cannot just coast. They must manually execute an AI output claim check. They have to ensure the machine didn't invent metrics to replace the restricted data.
But why mandate the synthetic middleman?
Well, think of the AI translation log like a digital immune system. The AI introduces synthetic pathogens, these little, highly plausible hallucinations and inflated scope claims.
Okay.
The candidate is the white blood cell. They have to actively fight off those synthetic infections to pull the rendering back to the truth. This entirely eliminates the worksheet dump mentality, where a candidate just copies and pastes from their initial evidence gathering right to the final rendering.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. If the standard, as clearly stated in the text, is simply that AI output must answer to the record, why do we need the pathogen at all?
To test their defense.
But a highly competent candidate could manually draft a brilliant rendering draft builder directly from their positioning hypothesis. That is a straight, clean line of human reasoning from evidence to market value. No pathogens required. No white blood cells needed.
But it doesn't prove they can govern external tools.
It proves they can build the record. That is what the certification is for. Forcing the AI translation log adds massive administrative overhead for a tool a master advisor might not even need or want to use for a specific client. Let's look at the back-end mechanics described in the source material. It is staggering. The Academy has built an entire ecosystem of automated gates and remediation loops around this single AI mandate.
Well, the gates are there to maintain a standard,
They are a labyrinth of system compliance checks. You have FYA notifications, for your awareness, triggering if a single AI log field is missing. You have candidate self-remediation loops, where the system kicks the entire capstone back if the rejected AI claims log is incomplete.
Yes, but
The candidate cannot even reach the certification-ready gate for human review until all these automated AI governance checks are passed. You are bogging down the certification of a human judgment methodology with administrative bloat. You are forcing a professional to generate a deliberate error from an AI just to prove to an automated gatekeeper that they can log the error.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, honestly, because you're treating the AI requirement as if it's just arbitrary paperwork, rather than a reflection of professional reality. Yes, the FYA notifications and the self-remediation loops protect the assessor's time, but they also enforce an absolute standard of discipline.
At what cost, though?
The text is unambiguous here. It says the Academy should not certify candidates who avoid AI governance. Why? Because an advisor who avoids AI governance in this specific moment in history is a liability to their clients.
Gate-kept artifact. You are actively incentivizing the candidate to write bad prompts.
Wait, I'm not following. How does it incentivize bad prompts?
Think about it. If I am a candidate, and I know I cannot pass the certification-ready gate without a populated rejected AI claims log, I am systematically encouraged to prompt the AI loosely. I want it to generate hallucination.
Oh, wow.
Yeah! I needed to make a mistake so that I can heroically reject it on the worksheet and pass the audit. It becomes performative governance. I'm not governing the tool to get a better result, I'm governing the tool to satisfy the rubric.
Okay, I see the angle you're playing there, but the methodology itself prevents that kind of gamification.
How? How does it prevent that?
Through the source-to-surface traceability table. If your prompt is intentionally terrible just to generate errors, your AI output claim check is going to be an absolute mess. And the record automated benchmark, the automated engine that compares the candidate's work against the LPR processing logic, is going to flag major discrepancies.
Assuming the benchmark catches it.
The benchmark will catch if your final renderings lack source traceability, or if you fail to identify proof gaps in your initial gathering. It's a holistic ecosystem. You can't just fake the logs. The final rendering still has to perfectly answer to the raw evidence. If you play games with the prompt, the final rendering will suffer and you'll fail on clean maturity anyway.
Well, even if we assume the benchmark is sophisticated enough to catch performative logging, which honestly is a big if, I keep returning to the definition of competence. The text says, certification tests advisor judgment. Judgment is the ability to weigh evidence, understand the nuance of a human career, and render it truthfully. When you elevate the AI use statement, the safe source packet, and the AI translation log to the exact same level of mandatory compliance as context reconstruction, you are shifting the gravitational center of the credential itself.
So you think it cheapens the credential?
I think it redefines it entirely. You are telling the market that a certified living professional record advisor is primarily an AI compliance officer rather than a master interpreter of human professional evidence.
I see the distinction you're drawing, but the source material explicitly rejects that binary. The capstone scoring categories require competence across the entire method. A candidate cannot pass just because their AI governance is flawless, if their claim maturity or source discipline is weak.
Right, but
the text specifically notes a candidate should not pass because one section is strong while privacy, claims, AI, or scope are unsafe. The AI governance is simply one of the critical safety pillars. It doesn't replace human judgment, it protects it.
But it is the only pillar that requires a synthetic injection to test. The source material allows a candidate to use a consenting family member's record for their capstone, right?
Yes, they can.
So imagine a candidate meticulously traces every piece of evidence of their spouse's career. They map it perfectly. They build a beautiful, traceable rendering. They have demonstrated the LPR method in its purest form. Rejecting that candidate because they didn't feed their spouse's data into a machine, generate a flawed output, and then correct it, betrays the core doctrine that every claim must answer to evidence. The evidence was there. The claim was accurate. The machine was entirely unnecessary.
The evidence doesn't require the machine. You're right about that. But the advisor requires the discipline of interacting with the machine. Look at the capstone defense scenario bank detailed in the text. The scenarios these candidates must defend, either orally or in writing, include very specific modern dilemmas. For example, AI creates a stronger bullet than the record supports. What do you do? Or the subject wants to upload all their files to AI to save time. What do you say?
And those are valid conversational scenarios, very real.
But they aren't just theoretical musings. These are the exact high-stakes conversations advisors are going to have every single day in their practice. The capstone is ensuring they have the lived experience of navigating that tension themselves. How can you advise a client on why they shouldn't let an AI inflate their resume if you haven't been forced to meticulously log and reject those exact inflations yourself? You have to feel the friction to understand the danger.
I don't disagree that governing AI is a vital modern skill. I really don't. Where we diverge fundamentally is on whether it should be the inescapable gateway to certification for a methodology that is fundamentally rooted in human truth. When we step back and look at the ultimate purpose of the certification, making AI mandatory risks a dangerous inversion.
How so?
It risks elevating system compliance, checking off translation logs and resolving automated remediation kicks above the foundational art of understanding a human being. The heart of the living professional record method is source truth, and source truth doesn't inherently require an algorithm to be understood, translated, or respected.
I hear you, and I acknowledge the administrative weight of these logs is a very heavy lift for the candidate. The labyrinth of FYI notifications and remediation loops is daunting. But I conclude that because we operate in an ecosystem fundamentally saturated by generative AI, an advisor who cannot or simply will not govern these tools is fundamentally unsafe to practice. The The mandatory AI capstone ensures that a certified professional isn't just someone who can fill out a template in a vacuum. It ensures they are an active, battle-tested protector of professional truth, capable of defending the factual source against automated distortion.
Well, it certainly guarantees they know how to navigate the messy intersection of the human record and the algorithm. Whether that makes them a more profound advisor or simply a better auditor of synthetic text is the tension the Academy has chosen to embrace.
And perhaps the true value of the capstone lies in forcing candidates to grapple with that very tension. We've explored the rigorous, sometimes paradoxical demands of this AI mandate, but there is so much more to uncover within the Academy's scoring rubrics, the automated benchmarks, and the deep mechanics of the method itself. The reality is, the pristine laboratory for professional record keeping is gone forever. We are all navigating the heavy traffic now. We leave it to you to decide which perspective holds more weight.